In this video, I'm going to be going through how to draw a top for something like this bar stool or even a similar coffee table. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to create a new part studio by clicking down on the plus in the bottom left hand corner and clicking on part studio. We then open up this new part studio, which I'm going to right click on the tab along the bottom of the screen, go up to rename, and I'm going to type in top. So now it's going to be easily identifiable when we go to put it into our assembly. So the first thing we're going to do, like what we've done with every other component we are going to draw our 2D shape. That is then going to be extruded into our 3D top. So we're going to use our sketch tool, and our top is going to go on the top of our stool, so we want to draw it in the top plane. So I'm going to click on that box that's outlined in yellow, the one that's got top in the top left hand corner here. So I click on that box. I'm going to use my center point rectangle, and I'm going to click in the center and then click again, and it's going to allow me to input some measurements. Now I'm actually just going to accept the measurements by pressing enter twice for now. To know what measurements we need, we're actually going to need to take some measurements off our assembly. So I'm going to open up the assembly again by clicking on the tab down the bottom. And in the bottom right hand corner, I've got these three buttons that I can press. One of them is show measure details. I'm going to click on that one. I need to know the measurement for the inside edge to the inside edge of my legs. I also need to know the measurements of my legs themselves, what stock has been used. All right, so I know that the legs are 42 by 42 square stock, so I'm going to keep that number in the back of my head, and I'm then going to measure by clicking on the line here that is the top edge of the rail, and you can see here on this measure section in the bottom right hand corner, it comes up with 200 millimeters. So I know that the top of my chair needs to be that 200 plus 42 on one side and 42 on the other. So I need to add those three measurements together, plus any overhang that I want for the top of the stool. So I want to have about a 10 millimeter overhang all the way around the stool. So that's going to be 10 millimeters on either side. So I need to add that in as well. So I'm going to get my calculator up and let's input some figures. So I know I need my 200 millimeters. So I'm going to type in 200. I'm going to add 42 for one leg, add 42 for another leg, and then I'm going to add another 20 millimeters. That's my 10 millimeters of overhang on either side of the stool. And I get a measurement of 304. So that's going to be the measurement, and because this is a square stool, it's going to be 304 by 304 is the square that I need for the basic shape of my top. So 304, so now I can go back to my top. I'm still in that sketch. I can double click on the measurements I want to change and type in 304, hit enter, double click on the other measurement, type in 304 and hit enter. Now if I want to come back and change the size of the top after I've put it on in the assembly later, I'm going to come back to this original sketch. I can double click on it and I can change that measurement at any point to make the top bigger or smaller, or even change the shape. If I wanted a more rectangular one, I wanted to add some curved cutouts, anything like that, I can always come back and change it in this original sketch. So once I've done with the sketch and I'm ready to turn it into a 3D object by extruding it, I need to click the tick to accept the sketch. So then it's time to extrude the shape. So you've got two options for this. Usually you can just click the extrude button and then come and click on the shape. At the moment, it doesn't seem to want to highlight that shape for me, which is a problem that you can run into at times. So to mitigate that, I'm going to get out of the extrude, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to click on the shape first so it's highlighted yellow, and then I'm going to click on extrude, and now it's allowing me to turn it into a solid shape. I'm going to put my thickness in, so I'm going to do a 19mm thick top because that's the thickness of the stock that I'm going to use to build the chair. Depending on the thickness of the stock that you're using, it could be thicker than 19, it could be thinner, but 19mm is probably the minimum thickness you're going to do for the top of something like this. So I'm going to stick with 19. I'm going to hit the tick. Now that's quite a plain top, so just to make it match the rest of the assembly, which if I go there, I've mostly got chamfers everywhere, so I'm going to stick with that theme of the chamfer. So I'm going to go back to the top. Along the top here, I'm going to select my chamfer tool, and I'm just going to click on that top square. I could go around and click each individual edge, but it's much faster to just click on the entire square. And then I just need to type in how big I want that chamfer to be. So I'm happy with the default 5mm, but I could have a look and see what a bigger one looks like. So there's a 10mm chamfer. I could do a 15mm chamfer, leaving almost nothing on the bottom. I could do something really little like a 3mm one. So you can play around with that and see what you like. I'm just going to stick with the stock 5mm and hit the tick to accept it. So that's it. That's the top drawn. Super simple. I know it's 304 by 304. Now those measurements are going to be important when we go to place it on the actual assembly. So unlike what we've done in the past with putting stuff together, we don't have a clear corner or edge or point on this particular piece that is going to be touching the part in the assembly we already have, the frame that we have. So we're going to need to be doing some offsetting. Okay, and I'm going to go through how to do that now. So if I click on the assembly, just like I have in the past, I want to add that top to the assembly. So I'm going to insert up in the top left hand corner. I'm going to go and select the top, and I'm just going to place it next to the stool for now and hit the tick to accept that I've added it in. Okay, now you'll see here I've already got this mate connector sitting there. I'm just going to delete that and quickly go through how to attach this top to the frame. Now I know the measurements of this frame, so from this center point of this leg to the center point of this leg, I know that it's that measurement that we had before, 304, minus the overhang, so minus 20. I know it's 284. Okay, so if I put a mate connector, so next to my insert tool I have these mate connectors. If I put a mate connector on the center point, I'm going to have it facing up just like that, and I click, that's going to put a connector that I can now very easily use. If I then accept that and I use my fastened mate tool to attach this bottom corner to that mate connector, okay, I can hit the tick button. Now we can see it's not in the correct position. Okay, it's overhanging way too much on this side and up here and not enough on the other sides. But I now know, by doing some quick math, how much I need to move it in this direction and in this direction over here. Okay, so what I can then do, I can get out of my fasten mate tool, I can go back to that most recent fastening that I did, fasten 12, I can double click on it, and I can use this offset tool that is selected here, and it then allows me to move using the different axes. So you can see I've got the green and I've got the red are labeled Y and X, and they're the same here underneath the offset tool, and I can put a certain amount of millimeters to move it. So let's say the Y axis, for example. I know the center of this leg will be 21 millimeters from the edge because that's half of the 42mm leg. So I know that it needs to move along the y-axis 21 millimeters to get to the edge, and then another 10 to have my 10 millimeters of overhang. So 21 plus 10 is 31. So if I type that into my y-axis, 31, and I press enter, okay, it's moved it in the wrong direction. It's gone the positive on the y-axis. I need it to go the other way, still on that green y-axis. So all I need to do is put a negative or a minus, which is up next to 0 on the right-hand side of your keyboard. Press enter, and it will slide it the other way. Now if I left click and rotate around, I can see that it's flush on the edge here. I also need to do that minus 31 on the x-axis. So if I do minus 31 and I press enter, okay, it's moved it across and we have that consistent overhang. Now, looking at this, I've moved it too far on the x-axis. Okay, so let's go back to 0 and let's have a closer look. So it's right on the corner already. Okay, so I actually don't need to do the full 31. I really only need to get it the 10 millimeters of overhang off the edge. All right, so I'm just going to put in minus 10 for the x-axis. All right, and if I spin this around now, I might just quickly tick the fastening so we can have a closer look at this. We can see, all right, it's a pretty consistent, well, not pretty consistent, it's exactly consistent, the overhang all the way around. Okay, so it's just going to involve doing a little bit of math to work out how much you need to offset it from the point that you select to attach it to. Okay, so I find the best way to do it is to put a mate connector on a central point on one of the legs so that you know the measurements that you then need to move it to get it to your 10 millimeters of overhang. Okay, and that's attaching a top to a stool. So drawing the top and attaching it. In the next video, I'm going to go through how you can then draw a set of plans for this stool. And this stool is going to be made available as a file that you can access publicly so that you can follow along and make a set of plans for this stool with me.